A man humiliated a woman at the gas station. Then her Hell's Angel's husband arrived. The clock above the diner counter read 5:30 in the morning when Maya Carter finally untied her apron. Her feet ached in a way that had become normal to her, a dull throb that started at her heels and climbed all the way up to her lower back. She had been on them for 9 hours straight, carrying plates of eggs and bacon, refilling coffee cups for truck drivers and night shift workers who barely looked up from their phones. The diner was called Rosie's, a small place with cracked vinyl booths and a bell above the door that jingled every time someone walked in. It sat on the edge of town, tucked between a laundromat and an auto repair shop that had been closed for as long as Maya could remember. The lights inside buzzed faintly, casting a yellow glow over the empty tables now that the early morning rush had faded. Maya wiped down the counter one last time, her movements slow but steady. She had learned long ago that tired hands still had work to do. Her manager, a heavyset man named Gus who chewed on toothpicks and rarely smiled, gave her a nod from behind the register. "Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. Good shift, Maya," he said. "You're the only one who shows up on time no matter what." "Thanks, Gus," she replied, forcing a small smile onto her face. It wasn't hard to smile at him. He had given her this job 2 years ago when nobody else would, back when she was carrying Lily on her hip and asking every business on Main Street if they needed help. She grabbed her jacket from the hook by the kitchen door and stepped outside into the cold morning air. The sky was still dark, just beginning to soften at the edges with the first hints of gray that came before sunrise. Her breath came out in small clouds as she walked to her car, an old sedan with a dented bumper and a check engine light that had been on for months. Inside the car, she sat for a moment before starting the engine. This was her quiet time, the few minutes each morning where she let herself just breathe. She thought about Lily, her 6-year-old daughter, probably still asleep at Mrs. Higgins' house down the street. Mrs. Higgins watched Lily overnight for a small fee, just enough to cover her own bills, and Maya was endlessly grateful for the arrangement. Being a single mother wasn't something Maya had planned for. Lily's father had left before she was even born, disappearing into a life that didn't include responsibility. Maya had cried about it for exactly 1 month. Then she had wiped her tears, gotten a job, and decided that her daughter would never feel unloved or unwanted, even if it meant working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet, flipping it open under the dim glow of the car's interior light. Inside were a few crumpled bills, barely enough to last until her next paycheck. She counted them twice, as if the numbers might change the second time. They didn't. Her car's fuel gauge blinked a warning at her from the dashboard, the needle hovering dangerously close to empty. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. There was a gas station just up the road, one she passed every day on her way home. She would have to stop there, even though it meant spending money she didn't really have to spare. "Just enough to get me through the week," she whispered to herself, starting the engine. The car rumbled to life, coughing slightly before settling into a steady hum. As she pulled out of the diner's parking lot, the streets were empty and quiet, the kind of quiet that only existed in the hour before the world woke up. Maya drove with both hands on the wheel, her eyes tired but alert. She thought about Lily's smile, about the way her daughter always ran to hug her no matter how late she came home. That thought alone was enough to keep her going, mile after mile, shift after shift. The gas station came into view a few minutes later, its lights glowing bright against the dark sky. Maya turned into the parking lot and pulled up beside an empty pump, shifting the car into park. She took a deep breath, grabbed her wallet, and stepped out into the cold morning air, ready to fill her tank before finally heading home. Maya swiped her card at the pump and pressed the button for regular, the cheapest option. She watched the numbers start to climb slowly, ticking upward 1 penny at a time, and made a mental note of exactly when she needed to stop the flow. $10. That was all she could spare today. Her phone buzzed in her jacket pocket while the gas nozzle hummed against her palm. She pulled it out with her free hand, and her tired face softened the moment she saw the screen. "Good morning, Mommy. I hope you have the bestest day. I love you to the moon." Mrs. Higgins must have helped Lily type it out before school, probably while she was eating her cereal at the kitchen table with her hair still messy from sleep. Maya could picture it perfectly. Her daughter's small fingers tapping at the letters, her tongue sticking out just slightly, the way it always did when she concentrated hard on something important. A real smile spread across Maya's face, the first one that morning that didn't feel forced. Her feet still ached, her back still throbbed, but none of that mattered much when she read words like that. She typed back quickly. "Good morning, baby. I love you more than the moon and all the stars, too. See you soon." She slipped the phone back into her pocket, feeling a little lighter than she had all night. This was why she did it. Why she stood on her feet for 9 hours straight, pouring coffee for strangers who never said thank you. Lily was worth every bit of it. The sound of a powerful engine pulled her attention away from her thoughts. A sleek, black car rolled into the gas station, its paint gleaming under the overhead lights like it had been polished just an hour before. It looked like something out of a magazine, the kind of car Maya had only ever seen in commercials. It pulled into the pump directly across from her. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out wearing a tailored gray suit that looked like it cost more than Maya made in an entire month. He had neatly combed hair and a watch on his wrist that sparkled even in the dim morning light. This was Derek Whitmore, though Maya had no way of knowing his name yet. Derek glanced around the gas station the way someone might glance around a room they felt was beneath them. His eyes landed on Maya's car first. The dented bumper, the faded paint, the crack running along the bottom corner of the windshield. Then his eyes moved to Maya herself, taking in her worn work uniform, the dark circles under her eyes, the way her ponytail had come loose after a long night of work. A slow smile crept across his face, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile that made Maya's stomach tighten instantly. "Wow," Derek said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "That is really something." Maya kept her eyes on the pump, hoping he would just get back in his car and leave her alone. She had dealt with plenty of rude customers at the diner. She knew how to keep her head down and let things pass. But Derek didn't stop. He took a few steps closer, still holding his phone loosely in one hand. "I mean, look at this car. Does it even run?" He laughed, glancing toward 2 other customers who were filling up nearby, as if inviting them to join in. "People really drive stuff like this in this day and age?" The 2 strangers shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Maya's grip tightened slightly around the gas pump handle. "Excuse me?" "I'm just saying," Derek continued, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "It must be rough, huh? Working some job that barely pays you enough to keep gas in a car like that. Some people just never figure it out, you know? Always making excuses instead of actually working hard." Maya felt her cheeks burn, embarrassment and anger swirling together in her chest. She didn't respond right away, focusing instead on breathing slowly, the way she always did when she needed to keep herself calm. Derek's smile widened as he noticed her silence. He raised his phone, angling it toward Maya and her car, his thumbs sliding across the screen to open the camera app. "This is too good," he muttered under his breath, more to himself than to her. "My followers are going to love this one." Derek held the phone up higher, tilting it so the screen caught both Maya's face and the dented bumper of her car in the same shot. His thumb tapped the record button, and a small red circle appeared in the corner of his screen. "Say hi to the camera," he said, grinning at her like she was a joke he had been waiting all week to tell. "Actually, don't. Just keep doing what you're doing. This is perfect content right here." Maya's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to the pump. The numbers kept climbing. $9.40. $9.50. "Look at this jacket," Derek said, zooming in slightly. "Is that a diner uniform? You know, some people work their whole lives and never own anything nice, and then they wonder why nobody respects them." He shook his head slowly, like he genuinely felt sorry for her. "It's a mindset thing, honestly. Poverty is a mindset." One of the other customers, a man in a delivery uniform, glanced over but quickly looked away when Derek's eyes swept in his direction. Nobody said anything. Nobody moved to help. They just watched, the way people sometimes do when they don't want to become part of someone else's trouble. Maya felt the heat rising in her face again, but underneath the embarrassment, something steadier was building. She thought of Lily's message still sitting in her phone. "I love you to the moon." She thought of all the mornings she had come home so tired she could barely stand, and how none of that tiredness had ever once stopped her from getting up the next day and doing it again. The pump clicked to $10 exactly. She pulled the nozzle out slowly, hung it back on its cradle, and closed her gas cap with a soft click. Only then did she turn to face Derek directly. "You don't know anything about me," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the pumps clearly enough that the other customers could hear every word. Derek smirked, keeping the phone steady. "I know enough." "No," Maya said, shaking her head gently. "You know what my car looks like. You know what my uniform looks like. That's not the same thing as knowing me." She took a small breath, steadying herself. "Everybody you meet is carrying something you can't see. Maybe I'm working a night shift so my daughter can eat breakfast before school. Maybe you're standing here making fun of strangers because something in your own life feels empty. We don't know each other's stories. That's the truth." For a moment, something flickered across Derek's face, a flash of something uncertain. But it disappeared just as quickly as it came. He laughed it off, shaking his head like her words meant nothing to him. "Wow, look at this," he said to the camera. "She's got a whole speech ready. Very inspiring." His voice dripped with sarcasm, but there was a stiffness underneath it now, like her calmness had thrown him off more than he wanted to admit. Maya didn't answer him again. She had said what she needed to say. Getting louder wouldn't make it more true, and matching his cruelty with more cruelty would only prove him right about something, though she couldn't have said exactly what. She walked around to her car door, opened it, and slid inside, without another word. Through the window she could see Derek still holding his phone up, catching her drive away as a part of his video. She started the engine, which coughed twice before settling into a steady hum, and pulled carefully out of the gas station and onto the road, leaving the bright lights and Derek's laughter behind her. Once he was sure she was gone, Derek lowered his phone and looked at the screen, replaying the last few seconds with a satisfied smile. He tapped through a few filters, added a caption that read, "When reality doesn't hit different," and hit the share button before climbing back into his gleaming black car. He expected comments filled with laughter. He expected people to agree with him, to praise him for pointing out what he believed was an obvious truth about hard work and success. He had no idea that somewhere out there, someone who knew exactly who he was would see that video too. The sound came from far off at first, a low rumble that rolled across the flat stretch of highway like distant thunder. Maya had just reached her car door, her hand on the cool metal handle, when she felt it more than heard it, a vibration humming up through the pavement and into the soles of her shoes. She turned her head toward the sound. Headlights cut through the evening dark. 3 of them, then 5, then more, each one belonging to a motorcycle rolling in formation down the road that led to the gas station. The engines grew louder, that deep growling roar that made the metal awning overhead seem to shake, and one by one the bikes turned in through the entrance and rolled to a stop in a wide half-circle near the pumps. Derek's smile faltered. He lowered his phone, though the red recording light still blinked in the corner of the screen. Forgotten now. The delivery driver by Pump 3 took a small step backward. The cashier, who had been watching everything from behind the counter window, straightened up and reached for something on the shelf below the register, though nobody could tell if it was a phone or something else entirely. The lead rider swung his leg off his bike and lowered the kickstand with the heel of his boot. He was a big man, broad through the shoulders, with a thick beard streaked here and there with gray and forearms marked with faded tattoos that told stories nobody standing there would ever know. His leather vest carried patches that most people recognized enough to be afraid of, even if they didn't understand exactly what they meant. He pulled off his helmet and tucked it under one arm, revealing a face that was weathered but calm, lines around his eyes that came as much from squinting into sunsets as from years of hard living. This was Jack Carter. 45 years old, built like a man who had spent a lifetime working with his hands, carrying himself with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need to raise its voice to be heard. When he walked, people noticed. When he stopped walking, people noticed even more, because it meant his attention had landed somewhere. Right now, it had landed on Maya. He crossed the lot in long, unhurried strides, the other riders staying near their bikes, letting him lead. Nobody at the gas station moved. It was as if the whole place had taken one collective breath and forgotten to let it out. Even Derek, who moments ago had been so certain of himself, so loud and sure, stood frozen by Pump 5, with his phone hanging loosely at his side. Jack stopped a few feet from Maya. Up close, the intimidation that clung to him seemed to soften, just slightly, the way a mountain still looks massive but no longer feels like it might fall on you. "Hey," he said, his voice low and steady, the kind of voice built for calming things down rather than stirring them up. "You okay?" Maya let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "I'm okay," she said. "Just a rough end to a long night." Jack's eyes moved over her face carefully, checking for anything she might not be saying out loud. Satisfied, he gave a small nod, then turned his head toward the man standing frozen near the pumps, phone still glowing faintly in his hand. For a moment, Jack studied him the way a person studies an old photograph, searching for the details buried beneath years of change. The expensive jacket, the confident posture that now looked stiff and unsure. The face, a little heavier than it used to be, a little more polished, but still carrying the same nervous flicker in the eyes that Jack remembered from a long time ago. Recognition settled over him slowly, like a weight easing into place. "Derek?" Jack said. And it wasn't a question. Derek's mouth opened, but nothing came out. His eyes darted toward Jack's vest, toward the patches, toward the row of motorcycles gleaming under the gas station lights, and then back to Jack's face, as if searching for some other explanation, any explanation, that wasn't the one slowly forming in his mind. Jack's expression didn't change. He simply stood there, steady and unreadable, waiting to see if Derek would remember him the way he remembered Derek. Derek's throat moved as he swallowed. I don't think we've met, he said, though his voice cracked on the last word, betraying the lie before it even finished leaving his mouth. Jack tilted his head slightly, the way a man does when he is looking at something from a new angle to see it more clearly. No, he said. We've met. The other bikers had gone quiet near their machines, watching without a word, sensing that this was not their moment to speak. The cashier inside the station had come out from behind the counter now, standing near the door with her arms crossed, curious but careful. Even the delivery driver at Pump 3 had stopped pretending to check his phone. 8 years ago, Jack said, his voice calm, almost gentle, though it carried across the lot like it was meant for everyone to hear. There was a diner off Route 9. You remember that diner? Derek's face went pale under the gas station lights. He opened his mouth, but no words came. You were sitting in a booth by the window, Jack continued. Middle of winter. You didn't have a coat that fit right, and your shoes had holes in the bottom. You'd been sitting there for almost 2 hours nursing a cup of coffee you could barely afford because the waitress felt bad and kept refilling it for free. Maya's eyes moved between the two men, confusion and understanding both fighting for space on her face. You don't have to do this, Derek said quietly, his voice small in a way that didn't match the man who had been laughing and filming just minutes earlier. But Jack wasn't finished. You'd lost your job, lost your apartment. You had a business plan folded up in your pocket that you kept showing to anybody who would look at it, hoping somebody would give you a chance. Most people walked right past you. Most people didn't even see you. Derek's jaw tightened. He looked down at the pavement, at his shoes, expensive leather ones now, nothing like the ones Jack was describing. I saw you, Jack said. I was coming off a long ride, stopped in for something hot to eat. You were shaking, and not just from the cold. You asked me if I had any spare change. Not for something to drink. For a bus ticket to see your sister, because you didn't have anywhere else to go. Derek's hands had started to tremble slightly at his sides. The phone slipped from his fingers and landed with a soft clatter on the concrete, forgotten completely now. I gave you what I had, Jack said. Wasn't much. But I also bought you a meal, and I sat with you for an hour while you told me about that business plan. You told me you were going to build something real one day. You told me if you ever made it, you'd remember what it felt like to have nothing, and you'd never let another person feel that small. The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel. Even the wind seemed to pause. You said you'd never forget, Jack said, his voice steady, without anger, without triumph. Just fact, laid out plain and simple, the way truth often is. Derek's eyes lifted, meeting Jack's for the first time since he'd stepped off his bike. Something was breaking apart behind his expression, some wall that had been built for years finally giving way. The memory came rushing back all at once, the cold booth, the torn shoes, the stranger with kind eyes and rough hands who had not judged him, who had simply helped. That was you, Derek whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. Derek looked past Jack, toward Maya, standing quietly by her old car with her arms wrapped around herself, and the full weight of what he had done settled over him like a stone, dropping into still water. The woman he had mocked, filmed, and humiliated for having little was standing in front of the very same kindness that had once saved his own life. He had laughed at someone struggling the way he once struggled, forgetting, somehow, completely forgetting, that he had once been the one asking strangers for help. Derek braced himself. His shoulders pulled up toward his ears, the way a man's body moves when he expects a blow to land. He had seen the leather vest, the patches, the size of Jack's arms. He had built a story in his head already, one where this ended with him on the ground, or worse, one where this ended with his name dragged through the mud online by 100 angry strangers. He waited for the shouting. He waited for the shame he deserved to be poured over him in front of everyone watching. It didn't come. "I'm not going to hurt you," Jack said. His voice was quiet now, quieter than before. "And I'm not going to put you on the internet either, even though you seem to think that's the only language people understand these days." Derek blinked. I don't understand." "You will," Jack said. He took a step closer, but there was nothing threatening in the movement. It was the same way a man steps closer to hear something better. "You think strength looks like this?" He gestured at himself, at his size, his bike, the patches on his vest. "You think it's about being big enough, or loud enough, or scary enough that people do what you want? That's not strength, Derek. That's fear wearing a costume." Derek said nothing. His eyes were still wet, still wide with something between shame and disbelief. "Real strength," Jack said, "is being the kind of man who remembers what it felt like to have nothing and still chooses to be kind to somebody who has less than you. Real strength is not needing to make somebody else small so you can feel big. You had that once. I saw it in you at that diner. Somewhere between then and now, you lost it." Maya stood by her car, arms still wrapped around herself, watching her husband with an expression that was slowly shifting from confusion into something softer. She had expected many things from Jack when he showed up. She had expected him to be angry. She had expected him to defend her the way a bull charges a fence. She had not expected this. She had not expected calm. "You could ruin me right now," Derek said, his voice cracking. "You could tell everyone what I did, what I said to her." He nodded toward Maya without quite looking at her. "You could put it online yourself. Turn it around on me." "I could," Jack agreed. "But then I'd be doing exactly what you did to my wife. I'd be using somebody's worst moment to make myself feel bigger. I don't want that kind of bigness. Never have." Derek looked down at the phone still lying on the concrete where it had fallen. The screen had gone dark, but the video was still there, still recorded, still waiting to be shared with thousands of people who would have laughed along with him an hour ago, and would now, if he pressed the wrong button, tear him apart instead. He bent down slowly and picked it up. His fingers were unsteady as he opened the file. He looked at Jack once more, as if asking permission, though nothing was asked out loud. Jack only nodded, just once. Derek pressed delete. The small chime of confirmation sounded strange in the quiet of the gas station lot, out of place next to the weight of everything that had just happened. It was such a small sound for something that felt so large. Derek turned to Maya, then. His face had lost all the sharpness it carried when he'd first started mocking her. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice broke on the words. "I don't have an excuse. What I said to you, what I did, there's no excuse for it. I was cruel because I was scared, and that doesn't make it right. I'm sorry." Maya studied him for a long moment. She didn't offer forgiveness right away, and she didn't need to. She only nodded, a small, quiet nod, the kind that says I hear you without saying I forgive you yet. Derek didn't wait for more. He turned, walked back to his car on unsteady legs, and drove away without another word, leaving the gas station quieter than it had been all night. Maya turned to Jack, watching him in a new light, the questions already forming behind her eyes. She thought about the diner, the coat that didn't fit, the coffee refilled for free, and she wondered how many other stories like that one her husband had never told her. The sun was climbing over the rooftops by the time Jack pulled the truck into the driveway. Maya had followed behind in her own car, her hands still a little shaky on the wheel, though she couldn't have said if it was from the cold morning air or everything that had happened at the gas station. The house looked the same as always, small and a little worn at the edges, but warm in the way a home gets when the people inside it love each other. Lily was already awake when they walked in, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor in her pajamas with cartoons playing on low volume. Her hair stuck up in 3 directions, and when she saw her parents come through the door, her whole face lit up like someone had switched on a lamp behind her eyes. "Daddy!" she shouted, and ran straight into Jack's legs, wrapping her small arms around him as far as they would go. Jack scooped her up like she weighed nothing at all, even though Maya knew his back had been bothering him for weeks. He pressed a kiss to the top of her messy hair and carried her to the couch, where he sat down heavy, like a man who hadn't slept because he hadn't. "Did you have fun with Grandma?" he asked. "We made pancakes," Lily said, holding up both hands like the story required demonstration. "Big ones, bigger than my head." "Bigger than your head, huh? That's a serious pancake." Maya watched them together for a moment before she went to the kitchen to put on coffee, her body moving through the motions of the morning, even though her mind was still back at the gas station, still turning over everything Jack had said to Derek. She had married a man everyone else seemed afraid of, and she had never once feared him herself, not for a single day of their marriage. But watching him tonight, she realized there were entire rooms inside her husband she had never been given a key to. When Lily wandered off to find her stuffed rabbit, Maya carried 2 mugs of coffee into the living room and sat beside Jack, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You never told me," she said quietly. Jack looked at her, not confused, like he'd been expecting the question since they left the gas station. "Told you what?" "About Derek. About helping him." She wrapped both hands around her mug, feeling the heat soak into her palms. "You knew him, really knew him, and you never said a word." Jack was quiet for a moment, staring at the steam curling up from his own cup. "It was a long time ago," he said. "Derek was a different man then, scared, broke, about to lose everything he had. I met him at a shelter downtown, back when I was doing volunteer runs on weekends. Nobody knew who he was going to become. He was just another guy trying to figure out how to eat that week." "So you helped him?" "I helped a lot of people," Jack said. "That's not the part that matters." "Then what does?" Jack turned to look at her, and there was something soft in his eyes, something tired but honest. "The moment you start telling people what you did for them, it stops being a gift and starts being a transaction, like you're keeping score, waiting for them to pay you back with gratitude or attention or whatever it is you think you deserve." He shook his head. "Real kindness doesn't need an audience, Maya. It doesn't need anybody clapping. You do it because it's right, and then you let it go." Maya studied him, feeling something shift and settle inside her chest, something like understanding. She thought about all the small, quiet things she had noticed over the years, the times money appeared when they needed it most, the times Jack disappeared for a few hours without explanation and came back looking tired but calm. Before she could say anything else, Jack's phone buzzed against the coffee table. He glanced at the screen, and Maya watched his jaw tighten just slightly. "It's Sarah," he said, already answering. He held the phone to his ear, and Maya watched his expression change as he listened, the ease draining slowly out of his face. "Slow down," Jack said. "Say that again." There was a long pause. Maya set her coffee down, her whole body suddenly still. "How bad?" Jack asked. "Sarah, how bad is it?" Maya slept most of the day, the kind of deep sleep that comes after a night shift and a morning full of shaking hands. When she woke, the afternoon light was slanting gold through the curtains, and she could smell coffee brewing somewhere in the house. Jack was in the kitchen, already dressed, his leather jacket hanging on the back of a chair. "You're up," he said, pouring her a cup without asking. "Good. I want to show you something." "Show me what?" "You'll see." He handed her the coffee, and there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not secrecy. Something closer to nervousness, like a man about to open a door he'd kept locked for a long time. Lily was with Jack's mother for the afternoon, so it was just the two of them in the truck, driving across town toward a part of the city Maya didn't visit much. They passed the diner where she worked, then kept going, past the old laundromat and the boarded-up shops, until Jack pulled into a parking lot in front of a squat brick building with a hand-painted sign out front. "Second Chance Families," it read, in blue letters that had faded, some from the sun. "I know this place," Maya said slowly, sitting up straighter in her seat. "I came here 3 years ago, when Lily was sick and I couldn't cover the hospital bill and still make rent. Someone here helped me get groceries for a month, helped me talk to the landlord so we didn't get evicted." "I remember," Jack said quietly. Maya turned to look at him. Something in his voice had changed. "What do you mean, you remember?" Jack parked the truck but didn't get out right away. He kept his hands on the wheel, looking straight ahead at the brick building like it held some kind of answer. "I started this place 12 years ago," he said, "before you and I met. Back when I was still figuring out what to do with a life I almost lost more than once. I used my own money, still do. Nobody knows that outside of Sarah and a couple of the board members. Not the families who come through the door, not the volunteers, nobody." Maya felt her chest tighten, the pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known she was holding suddenly clicking into place. "You funded this whole time." "Every month," Jack said. "Whatever I could spare from the shop, from side jobs, from anything. It's not charity money from some corporation. It's just money I earned and decided to give somewhere it could do some good. And I came here." Maya's voice was barely above a whisper. "I sat in that building and cried in front of a stranger because I didn't know how I was going to feed my daughter. And it was you. The whole time it was you, and I never knew." "I didn't want you to know," Jack said, and there was no shame in it, only honesty. "Not because I didn't trust you, because I never wanted you to feel like I was keeping score. Like every good thing that happened to us came with strings attached." He finally turned to look at her. "You needed help. You got help. That's all that mattered to me." Maya didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did a little of both, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand, while Jack watched her with that same patient calm he always carried. She thought about all those months she'd blamed herself for needing help, all the nights she'd told herself a good mother wouldn't have to ask. "Come on," Jack said gently, opening his door. "There's someone inside who's been waiting to see you." They walked through the front doors together, past the same reception desk Maya remembered from years before, and found Sarah standing near the back office, her face tight with worry the moment she saw them. "Jack," she said, her voice low and urgent. "We need to talk. It's Langford. He's made an offer to the city. He wants to shut us down and put a private development on this land instead, and he's already got people listening." Sarah's words hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Jack's jaw tightened, just slightly, but he nodded like a man who had expected bad news to come knocking eventually. "We'll talk about Langford," he said. "Give me the afternoon first. I want Maya to see the place. All of it." Sarah glanced between them, then softened. "Of course. Take your time." Jack led Maya down a hallway lined with crayon drawings taped to the walls, past a room where a group of kids sat coloring at a long table, past an office where a woman was helping someone fill out a job application. Everywhere Maya looked, she saw small moments of ordinary kindness happening, like they were nothing special. In the front room, a woman named Denise sat folding donated clothes into neat piles. She looked up when Jack walked by and her whole face changed. "Jack Carter," she said, standing up. "I was wondering when you'd come around." "Denise, this is my wife, Maya." Denise took Maya's hand in both of hers. "Honey, you don't know what this man did for me. 3 years ago, my husband left, took everything with him but the kids and a car that barely ran. I came in here so ashamed I could hardly speak. Jack sat with me for 2 hours, didn't judge me once, helped me get my kids into daycare so I could work again. I got my own apartment 8 months later." Her eyes filled up. 8 months. I still can't believe it." Maya swallowed hard and thanked her, then followed Jack further into the building, where an older man in a faded army cap was stacking folding chairs against a wall. "That's Walt," Jack said quietly. "Served 2 tours, came home to nothing. No job, no family close by, nowhere to sleep some nights." Walt straightened up when he saw them, offering Jack a firm handshake. "Carter, good to see your ugly face." He laughed, then looked at Maya. "This man got me into a program that helped me find work, paid my rent for 2 months when I couldn't cover it myself, didn't ask for a thing in return. I've been volunteering here ever since, giving back what I can." They kept moving through the building, and every room held another story. A young mother named Priya, who had been on the edge of losing custody of her son, until Second Chance Families helped her find stable housing. A teenage boy named Marcus, who came in after school because the center gave him a quiet place to do homework instead of an empty apartment. A grandmother raising 3 grandchildren alone, who received groceries every week without ever being asked to explain why she needed them. By the time the afternoon light started turning orange through the windows, Maya felt something shifting inside her chest, something bigger than gratitude. She thought about the years she had spent believing she was alone in her struggle, believing that needing help meant she had failed somehow. Now she understood that an entire quiet network of people had been holding each other up the whole time, and her husband had been the one holding the whole thing together without ever asking for thanks. They ended up back in the small office where Sarah worked, the 2 of them sitting across from each other at a scratched wooden desk. Jack looked tired in a way Maya hadn't seen before, like the weight of everything he had built was finally catching up to him now that it was in danger. "Jack," Maya said, "I want to help." He looked up at her. "Maya, you don't have to do this. This has been mine to carry." "That's exactly the problem," she said, leaning forward. "You've been carrying it alone this whole time. I sat in Denise's chair once. I felt what she felt. Ashamed, scared, like I was failing my own daughter, and somebody helped me without judging me, without making me feel small." Her voice grew steadier. "These families deserve the same chance I got. I'm not going to sit back and watch some rich man with more money than sense tear this place apart because it doesn't fit his idea of profit." Jack studied her for a long moment, something like relief and pride moving across his face. "You really mean that?" "I've never meant anything more," Maya said. "Whatever Langford is planning, we fight it together. This place doesn't just belong to you anymore, Jack. It belongs to every family in this building, and I intend to help you keep it that way." The next few days blurred together for Maya, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from doing something that mattered. She still worked her shifts at the diner, still came home smelling like coffee and bacon grease, still packed Lily's lunch and checked her homework. But now, every spare hour went to Second Chance Families. She would drive straight from the diner to the center, still in her uniform, a notebook and a pen tucked into her bag. "You don't have to change out of your work clothes for this," Sarah told her the first day, laughing a little. Nobody here is judging you for smelling like pancakes." Maya laughed too, but something in her relaxed at those words. Nobody here judged anybody for anything. That was the whole point. She started with Denise, sitting across from her at the folding table while Denise's youngest napped on a cot in the corner. Maya asked simple questions. What was it like before? What changed? What would you want people to know? Denise talked for almost an hour, and Maya wrote every word down, her hand cramping by the end, her heart full. She talked to Walt next, out on the back steps of the center while he smoked one careful cigarette, the only one he allowed himself each day. He told her about coming home from his second tour and finding his apartment already rented out to someone else, his things sitting in boxes on the sidewalk. He told her about the shame of asking for help after years of being the one people depended on. "Jack never made me feel like less of a man," Walt said, tapping ash onto the concrete. "That's rare, you know. Most people who help you make sure you know you need helping. Jack just helped." Maya wrote that down, word for word. She talked to Priya, who cried twice during their conversation, and to Marcus, who was shy and quiet until he started talking about how the center felt safer than his own apartment building. She talked to the grandmother, Ruth, who fed her a slice of homemade pie while she talked about her 3 grandchildren and the boxes of groceries that showed up every Thursday like clockwork. By the end of the week, Maya had filled 2 notebooks. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. Her feet ached from standing all day at the diner and then sitting hunched over a table taking notes all evening. She had not had a full night's sleep in 6 days. Jack noticed. "You look worn thin," he said one night, watching her rub her eyes at the kitchen table while Lily colored beside her, oblivious to the tension humming quietly between her parents. "I'm fine," Maya said, not looking up. "Maya." She finally met his eyes. "Jack, I'm doing something that matters. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm actually building something instead of just surviving it. Don't ask me to stop." He was quiet for a moment, his big hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he wasn't drinking. Then he nodded slowly. "I'm not asking you to stop, I just don't want you to burn yourself out trying to save something before we even know how bad the fight is going to be." "Then let's find out," Maya said. "Together." Jack almost smiled at that. Almost. It was 2 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon, when Sarah called them both into the office, her face pale, a printed letter shaking slightly in her hand. "It's official," she said, sliding the paper across the desk. "Langford filed paperwork with the city. He's proposing to buy the land under the center and redevelop it into luxury apartments. He's got investors lined up. He's already met with the zoning board." Maya felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her feet. She picked up the letter, scanning the dense legal language, the words acquisition and redevelopment and timeline jumping out at her like small blades. "How fast can this move?" Jack asked, his voice low and even, though his knuckles had gone white where they gripped the edge of the desk. "Fast," Sarah said. "If the zoning board approves his proposal next month, we could be looking at eviction within 90 days. 90 days. Maya thought of Denise's kids, of Walt stacking chairs, of Marcus doing his homework in a quiet corner because he had nowhere else to go. 90 days, she repeated, and looked up at Jack, whose jaw had gone tight in that way she recognized now, the way that meant he was scared and trying very hard not to show it. "Then we don't have much time," Jack said. The next afternoon, Maya was at the folding table sorting through her notebooks when the front door of Second Chance Families opened, and Derek Whitmore walked in. He looked different than he had at the gas station. Gone was the confident smirk, the phone held up like a weapon. He wore a plain gray shirt and jeans, no cameras, no assistant trailing behind him. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, and his shoulders were hunched like a man walking into a room he was not sure would let him leave. Sarah spotted him first. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Jack Carter," Derek said. His voice was quiet, nothing like the loud, mocking tone Maya remembered from that morning at the pump. "And Maya, if she's here." Maya stood up slowly, her heart pounding. She had not seen Derek since that day, though the memory of it still sat in her chest sometimes, small and sharp, like a splinter that never quite worked its way out. "I'm here," she said. Derek's eyes found her, and something in his face crumpled. "Maya, I've been trying to work up the nerve to come here for days." Jack came out from the back office at that moment, drawn by the sound of an unfamiliar voice. He stopped when he saw Derek, his expression unreadable, arms crossing slowly over his broad chest. "Derek," Jack said. "Jack." Derek swallowed hard. "I know I have no right to walk in here. I know that, but I needed to say this in person." "Say what?" Jack asked, his voice calm but not unkind. Derek looked at Maya first. "I've thought about that morning at the gas station every single day since it happened. What I said to you, the way I treated you, filming you like you were content for my page." He shook his head, disgusted with himself. "You didn't deserve any of it. You were tired and doing your best, and I made you a punchline because it made me feel powerful. That's the truth. I'm sorry, Maya. I mean that with everything in me." Maya felt her throat tighten, but she didn't speak yet. She wanted to hear the rest. Derek turned back to Jack. "And you? You knew who I was before I even placed you. I've spent 3 years building an image of myself as a self-made man, somebody who clawed his way up with nothing but grit. I let people believe that because the truth felt too embarrassing. The truth is, 5 years ago, I was broke, desperate, about to lose everything, and a stranger on a motorcycle stopped to help me change a flat tire on the side of the highway when I had no one else to call. That stranger bought me a meal, gave me his number, and connected me with people who helped me get back on my feet. I promised myself I'd never forget that kindness." He let out a shaky breath. "Then I forgot it completely. I built a whole career mocking the very people who used to be me." The room was quiet, except for the hum of the old ceiling fan turning overhead. "I've felt sick since that day," Derek continued. "Guilty every time I posted anything. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about your face, Maya, how calm you stayed, how you just told me kindness costs nothing and walked away. That undid something in me." Maya finally spoke, her voice steady. "Thank you for saying that. It means something." Derek nodded, then looked between them both, straightening slightly, like he was gathering courage for one more thing. "I want to make this right. I have a platform, a big one, millions of followers. I could post about second-chance families, tell my audience the truth about what happened, ask them to support the center. I could probably raise real money fast. I want to use what I built for something good instead of something cruel." Jack studied him for a long moment, his expression neither warm nor cold, simply steady. "Words are easy, Derek. You've built a career on words, a caption, a video, an apology on camera. All of that fades in a day. People forget by the next scroll." Derek's face fell slightly. "If you want to make this right," Jack continued, "it can't just be a post. It has to be action, real work, time. Showing up here when nobody's filming, when there's nothing in it for your image, that's what redemption actually looks like." Derek was quiet for a moment, taking in what Jack said. Then he nodded, slow and certain. "Okay, show me where to start." That was how it began. Not with a camera flash or a big announcement, but with Derek Whitmore rolling up his sleeves at a folding table helping Sarah sort through boxes of donated canned food like it was the most normal thing in the world. Over the next few days, the little community center buzzed with a different kind of energy. Word had gotten out that Victor Langford wanted to shut down second-chance families, and the families who had been helped by the program were not going to let that happen without a fight. Maya sat at the table with a notepad, writing down names. Veterans, single parents, a grandmother raising 3 grandkids on her own after her daughter passed. An older man named Frank, who had lost his job at 58 and thought his life was over until Sarah helped him find work again. Each person had a story, and each story mattered. "We need people to understand what this place really is," Maya said one afternoon, looking around the room at the group that had gathered. "Not just a building, not just a charity. It's the difference between a family eating dinner or not. Between a mom finding childcare so she can work her shift or losing her job because she couldn't." Jack stood near the back, arms crossed, listening. He rarely spoke much in these meetings, letting Maya take the lead. But everyone in the room could feel how proud he was of her, even without a word. "I want people to hear my story," Maya said, turning to Derek. "The whole thing. Not just the part where you were unkind to me. The part before that, too. What it's like to work all night, to count your last few dollars at a gas pump, wondering if it's enough to get you home. I think people need to understand that struggling doesn't mean you're lazy or broken. It just means you're human." Derek nodded, already pulling out his phone to take notes, the way he used to for his old content, except now his hands were not shaking with excitement over a joke. They were shaking with the weight of trying to get something right. "We'll do a video," he said. "But not like before. No mocking angle, no gotcha moment. Just you, telling the truth. I'll post it along with my own apology, and I'll ask people to donate directly to the center." Maya agreed, and 2 days later, they filmed it in the very same community room where Derek had first walked in looking so lost. Maya sat in a plain chair, hands folded in her lap, and spoke plainly about that morning at the gas station. She talked about counting change, about the shame she felt when Derek mocked her, and about the strength it took to walk away without saying something she would regret. "People assume if you're struggling, you did something wrong," she said, looking straight into the camera. "But sometimes life just gets hard. A car breaks down, a shift gets cut, a bill comes due before payday. That doesn't make you less of a person. It just means you need a little help. And there is no shame in that." When the video went up, something unexpected happened. The old footage from the gas station, the one Derek had filmed to humiliate her, resurfaced online, shared side by side with the new video. But this time the comments were different. People were not laughing at Maya. They were furious at Derek's old behavior and moved by Maya's calm dignity in the face of it. They saw Jack's quiet strength when he arrived, how he never raised his voice, never threw a punch, just asked if his wife was okay. Comments poured in. Strangers sharing their own stories of hard times, people tagging friends, saying, "This is why we need places like this." Small donations started coming in, then bigger ones. Local news picked up the story. A woman from 2 states away sent a check for $500 with a note that said, "I was Maya once. Someone helped me too." Sarah stood by the donation box near the front counter one evening, watching the numbers climb, tears in her eyes. "I don't believe it," she whispered. "I really don't believe it." Maya, standing beside her, allowed herself the smallest smile. It was the first time in weeks she had let herself feel something close to hope. Jack came up behind them, resting a hand gently on Maya's shoulder. "Looks like the tide's turning," he said quietly. For the first time since Victor Langford had set his plans in motion, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a real chance. The good feeling did not last long. 3 days after the video went up, Sarah called Maya early in the morning, her voice tight and strange. "You need to see this," she said. "Turn on your phone." Maya sat at the kitchen table, Lily eating cereal beside her, and opened the link Sarah sent. It was a press release from Victor Langford's company, dressed up to look like a news story. The headline made her stomach drop. Questions raised over second-chance families. Finances, founder may have profited from charity funds. Maya read it twice, her hands going cold. The article claimed that Jack had used donated money to pay himself a salary through a shell account, that he had quietly redirected funds meant for families into his own pocket. There were numbers, charts, quotes from an unnamed financial expert who said the pattern looked suspicious. None of it made sense to Maya. She knew Jack. She knew what he had given up, not what he had taken. But she also knew how these things worked. A headline like that did not need to be true. It only needed to make people wonder. By that afternoon, the comments under Maya's video had changed. The kind words were still there, but now they were mixed with doubt. Wait, so was this whole thing a scam? Should have known there was a catch. Guys like that always have an angle. Maya felt sick reading them. She found Jack out back of their house, sitting on the old wooden bench he had built years ago, staring at nothing. She sat down beside him, the article still open on her phone. "Jack," she said softly, "tell me it's not true." He turned to look at her, and there was no anger in his eyes, only tiredness. "You already know it's not true, Maya." "I know," she said, "but I need us to prove it. People are starting to believe him. If we don't show them the truth, this could end everything you built." Jack rubbed a hand over his face. "Victor's smart. He knows people don't need proof to believe something bad. He just needs enough doubt to make them stop trusting." "Then we take that doubt away," Maya said. "There has to be records somewhere, bank statements, something that shows every dollar you put into the center came out of your own pocket and nothing came back." "There is," Jack said. "Years of it. I kept everything, every receipt, every note. Never touched a cent of what people gave. Every dollar I have ever put in came straight from my own paycheck." "Then let's show people," Maya said, her voice rising with urgency. "Let's pull it all together and prove it. We can't just sit here and let him win with lies." Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. "I'm not going to fight him the way he's fighting us." Maya stared at him. "What does that mean? Jack, this is your name he's dragging through the mud, everything you've worked for." "I know," Jack said, "but if I go out there swinging, calling him a liar, trying to tear him down the way he's trying to tear me down, then what's the difference between him and me? People will just see two rich men throwing mud, except I'm not even rich. I'll just look angry and desperate." "So we do nothing?" Maya asked, her frustration cracking through. "We just let him win?" "No," Jack said, taking her hand. His grip was steady, the way it always was, even now. "We gather the truth, quietly, carefully. We give people the facts, not a fight. I'm not going to attack Victor Langford, Maya. I'm not going to sink to that." "But what if it's not enough?" Maya asked, her eyes filling with tears. "What if people choose to believe the lie because it's easier?" Jack looked at her for a long moment, his voice low and certain. "Then we keep living the truth anyway. The truth always comes out eventually, Maya. It might take time. It might take more than we want it to. But lies don't hold up forever. Truth has a way of surfacing, even when people try to bury it." Maya wiped her eyes, wanting to believe him, wanting to feel the same calm he carried even now, in the middle of the storm Victor had created around them. The next morning, Maya set up a workspace at the kitchen table. Boxes of papers covered every inch of it, pulled from the closet where Jack kept years of records. She had not known how much there was until she saw it all stacked in front of her. Folders of bank statements, envelopes stuffed with receipts, a shoebox full of handwritten letters, some with crayon drawings on them from kids who could not yet write their names. A knock came at the door around 9. When Maya opened it, Derek stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee, and looking like he had not slept much either. "I know you probably don't want my help," he said, "but I caused part of this mess. Let me help fix it." Maya studied him for a moment. The man standing on her porch looked nothing like the one who had mocked her at the gas station. His shoulders were lower now. His voice had lost its sharp edge. "Fine," she said, stepping aside. "But you're not here to make yourself feel better. You're here to work." "Understood," Derek said, and he meant it. They spent the next 3 days going through everything together. Derek turned out to be good with numbers, better than Maya expected. He organized the bank statements by month, matched every deposit and withdrawal, and built a spreadsheet that laid out years of Jack's finances in a way anyone could understand. "Look at this," Derek said on the second day, turning his laptop screen toward Maya. Every single deposit into the center's account came from Jack's personal paycheck. Not $1 came from anywhere else until donations started after your video. And look here." He pointed at a column of numbers. "He never took a salary, not once. Even when the center was struggling and he could have paid himself back for expenses, he didn't." Maya leaned closer, her chest tightening. It was all there in black and white. Years of Jack quietly pouring his own money into helping strangers while never taking a cent for himself. They found the letters, too. Dozens of them, kept safe in that old shoebox like they were treasures. A single mother thanking Jack for covering her rent the month she almost lost her apartment. A veteran writing about how Jack helped him find work when nobody else would give him a chance. A child's drawing of a motorcycle with the words, "Thank you, Mr. Jack," scrawled underneath in messy handwriting. Maya sat back in her chair, tears in her eyes. "He never told me about any of this," she whispered. "Not one word." Derek picked up one of the letters and read it silently before setting it down with care. "He never wanted credit," he said. "I get that now. That's probably why it was so easy for Victor to twist things around. Jack never left a trail of praise for himself, just proof of what he gave away." By the 3rd day, they had built a complete picture. Spreadsheets, scanned letters, bank records lined up side by side showing the truth clearly. Maya felt a flicker of hope for the first time in days. This was proof, real proof. Enough to show anyone willing to look that Jack had never taken a single dollar for himself. "We need to get this out there," Maya said, gathering the papers into a neat stack. "Sarah can help us put together something for the community. We show people the truth before this goes any further." Derek nodded. "I can reach out to a few contacts, too. People who might actually listen instead of just repeating whatever Victor says." Maya felt something settle in her chest, something close to relief. They had the truth now. All they needed was time to share it. That evening, her phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. Maya opened it, expecting an update on timing, maybe a plan for how to release everything they had found. Instead, the message made her stomach drop. "Maya, I don't know how to say this. The city pulled our funding this afternoon. The landlord says without it we can't keep the building open. The board met an hour ago. They're saying we might have to close for good." Maya stared at the screen, the stack of proof still sitting in front of her on the table, suddenly feeling like it had come one day too late. The Second Chance Families building looked the same as it always had. Red brick walls, a hand-painted sign above the door with a sun rising over a house, kids' artwork taped up in every window. But that week, it felt different. It felt like a house waiting for a funeral. Maya arrived Monday morning to find the parking lot already half full. Word had spread fast, the way bad news always does. Families came in small groups, some carrying casseroles, some carrying nothing but heavy hearts. They didn't come for the food pantry or the child care help. They came to say goodbye. An older woman named Ruth stood by the donation shelves, running her fingers along the cans of soup like she was saying goodbye to old friends. "This place fed my grandkids for 2 winters," she told Maya, her voice shaking. "I don't know where we'll go now." A young father named Marcus stood near the community bulletin board, staring at a flyer for job training classes that would never happen now. His daughter, maybe 6 years old, held his hand and looked around at the toys in the corner, not understanding why her father's eyes looked wet. Maya moved through the building all morning, hugging people she barely knew, listening to stories she had never heard before. A veteran named Tom told her how Jack sat with him for hours one night when he couldn't stop shaking, back when nobody else would return his calls. A single mother named Priya explained how the child care program let her keep her job, the only thing standing between her family and the street. Every story was the same underneath. Someone had nowhere else to turn, and this building had been there. Jack worked quietly in the back room most of the day. Maya watched him through the doorway as he folded blankets and stacked them into boxes, his big hands moving slow and careful, like he was trying to make the work last longer than it needed to. He didn't say much. He nodded at families as they passed, offered a firm handshake here, a quiet word there. But Maya could see it in his shoulders, the way they curved forward like something heavy sat on them. By Thursday, most of the boxes were packed. The shelves stood empty. The bulletin board was bare. The playroom, once loud with kids running and laughing, sat silent, the toys already boxed away for donation to another shelter across town. Friday evening, after the last family left, Maya walked through the building one more time. Her footsteps echoed against the empty floor. She found herself standing in the doorway of the main room, looking at the space where dozens of folding chairs used to sit during the Tuesday night dinners. Now there was nothing but bare tile and dust. She heard a sound from the back office. Soft, almost nothing. She followed it and found Jack sitting alone at the old metal desk, the one he had used for years to do paperwork nobody ever saw. A single lamp lit the room. Everything else sat dark and empty around him. He didn't hear her come in. He sat with his elbows on the desk, his head down, his big shoulders shaking just slightly. Maya had never seen him cry. Not once, in all their years together. She stood frozen in the doorway for a moment, unsure if she should step forward or give him this alone. "Jack?" she said softly. He wiped his face quickly and sat up straighter, but it was too late. She had already seen. "I'm fine," he said, his voice rough. Maya walked over and knelt beside his chair, placing her hand on his arm. "You don't have to be fine, not with me." Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I keep thinking about all those people today. Ruth, Marcus, Tom. They trusted me. They believed I'd always be here for them." He shook his head slowly. "And now I'm the reason they have nowhere to go." "Jack, this isn't your fault. Isn't it?" He looked at her, his eyes red and tired. "I built this place on my own back, thinking I could carry it forever. I never asked for help because I was afraid of exactly this, failing them, failing all of them." His voice broke on the last word. "I was supposed to protect this place, and I couldn't." The next morning, Maya woke up before the sun came through the curtains. She lay still for a moment, listening to Jack's slow breathing beside her, and thought about the way his voice had cracked the night before. She had never seen him break like that. It settled something in her chest, hard and certain. She wasn't going to let this place die quietly. By 7, she sat at the kitchen table with her phone in one hand and a cup of coffee going cold in the other. Lily ate cereal across from her, swinging her feet under the chair, humming a little song to herself. Maya scrolled through her contacts, one name after another. People she had met over the years. People who had been helped. People who owed nothing to her, but who might still remember what it felt like to be seen when nobody else looked their way. She started with Ruth. "I know it's early," Maya said into the phone, "but I need to ask you something. Would you be willing to tell your story? About what this place did for you and your grandkids? Publicly, I mean. On camera or in front of people?" Ruth was quiet for a second. Then her voice came through, steady and sure. "Baby, I'll shout it from the rooftop if it helps." Maya called Marcus next, then Tom, then Priya. One by one, she asked the same question, and one by one, they said yes. Some cried on the phone. Some laughed, surprised that anyone wanted to hear what they had to say. All of them agreed. By noon, Maya had a list of 20 names. By evening, it was closer to 50. She sat at the small folding table in the community center's back office, the same desk where Jack had broken down the night before, and she wrote everything by hand. Names, stories, dates. She built a folder thick with proof that second chance families had never been about money or image. It had been about people. Real ones with real names who had nowhere else to turn until Jack opened a door for them. Across town, Derek Whitmore sat alone in his office, staring at a blinking camera light on his desk. His hands felt heavier than they had in years. He had rehearsed what he wanted to say a dozen times, deleting and starting over, deleting again. But this time, he didn't stop. He pressed record. "My name is Derek Whitmore," he began, his voice shaking slightly. "Some of you know me from my videos, from my business, from the image I built online." He paused, swallowing hard. That image was a lie. He told the truth, all of it. He talked about the woman at the gas station, about the cruel words he said to make himself feel powerful. He talked about Jack Carter, the man he had once looked down on without knowing his true character, the same man who had saved him years earlier when Derek was drowning in debt and shame. He admitted that his entire online persona had been built on hiding his own struggles by making others feel small. "Jack Carter didn't do this for attention," Derek said, his eyes wet. "He did it because he's a good man, a better man than I've ever been, and it's time people knew the truth." He posted the video that night without editing a single word. By Saturday, word had spread across the whole town. People who had seen the video, people who had heard Ruth's story, Marcus's story, Tom's story, all of it stitched together into something bigger than any single moment of cruelty or shame. The final public meeting was scheduled for Saturday evening at the community center, the last chance for anyone to speak before the building closed for good. Maya arrived early with Jack and Lily, expecting a small crowd, maybe a few dozen faces they recognized. Instead, the parking lot overflowed. Cars lined the street for blocks. People stood shoulder to shoulder outside the door, spilling onto the sidewalk, holding signs, holding each other, holding candles as the evening light faded into dusk. Ruth stood near the front, her grandchildren beside her. Marcus held his daughter's hand, both of them wearing shirts someone had printed with the sun and house logo from the center's sign. Tom stood tall in his old uniform jacket, his eyes steady for the first time in years. Jack stopped walking when he saw them all. Hundreds of people, gathered not because they had to, but because they wanted to stand beside him. Jack stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, his hand finding Maya's without him even thinking about it. Lily gripped his other hand, looking up at all the faces, not understanding everything, but understanding enough. She could feel it in the air. Something important was happening. Sarah Mitchell stepped up to a small microphone, set up on the community center's front steps. Someone had strung up string lights along the porch railing, and they glowed soft yellow against the darkening sky. She tapped the microphone once, and the crowd quieted like a held breath. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah said, her voice trembling but clear. "Tonight isn't about defending a building, it's about telling the truth. So I'm going to step aside and let the people who know that truth best speak for themselves." She stepped back, and Ruth walked forward first. Her grandchildren stayed close to her legs, peeking out from behind her skirt. "I lost my daughter 3 years ago," Ruth said, gripping the microphone stand with both hands. "Left me with these 2 babies and nothing else. No money, no plan. I didn't know how I was going to feed them, let alone raise them, right?" She looked down at the children, then back at the crowd. "Jack Carter showed up at my door one day. Didn't ask for nothing, just brought groceries and a bag of clothes for the kids. Said a friend told him I needed help. I never even knew who that friend was. He kept coming back. Never once asked me to thank him in public. Never once asked for anything at all." The crowd murmured, some wiping their eyes. Marcus stepped up next, his daughter clinging to his side. "I was 3 months behind on rent," he said, ready to give up. "Jack found me a job before I even asked him for one. Paid my back rent out of his own pocket so we wouldn't get thrown out. I tried to pay him back once. He told me to pay it forward instead. That's all he ever wanted." One after another, they came forward. A young mother who had been given diapers and formula during her hardest month. A teenager who had been given a scholarship to finish trade school. An old man who had been given a warm coat and a hot meal on the coldest night of the winter. No questions asked. Then Tom stepped up, still wearing his old uniform jacket, the medals on his chest catching the porch light. "I came home from my second deployment broken," Tom said, his voice rough. "Nobody wanted to hire a guy who jumped every time a car backfired. I was sleeping in my truck. Jack found me in a parking lot at 2 a.m. He didn't call the police. He didn't walk away. He sat with me, talked with me until sunrise. Then he got me a bed at the shelter and a job 2 weeks later." Tom paused, looking out at the crowd. "That man saved my life, and he never once asked for a single thing in return." The crowd was silent, some crying openly now, others nodding, remembering their own stories, or simply understanding for the first time what quiet kindness could look like. Jack stood at the back, his jaw tight, his eyes wet. Maya squeezed his hand. That was when Derek Whitmore stepped out from the edge of the crowd. He walked slowly toward the steps, his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, his face pale under the string lights. Whispers rippled through the crowd as people recognized him. Some faces turned hard with anger. Others just watched, waiting. Derek reached the microphone. His hands were shaking as he gripped the stand. "Most of you know who I am," he said, his voice cracking. "Some of you have seen the video I posted, but I need to say this in person, standing in front of the people I hurt." He looked out at Maya, who stood beside Jack, watching him with steady eyes. "I humiliated a good woman at a gas station because I wanted attention," Derek said. "I made her feel small so I could feel big. and the whole time I had no idea that the man standing beside her was the same man who saved me years ago, when I was drowning in debt, about to lose everything I had built. Jack Carter helped me start over. He never asked for credit. He never asked me to pay him back. And I forgot him the moment my life got easier. His voice broke, and he had to stop for a moment before continuing. I built my whole career pretending I did it all myself, pretending I never needed help, and I let that lie turn me into someone who hurt people instead of helping them. He looked directly at Jack now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm done hiding what you did for me. A murmur rolled through the crowd, but Derek held up a hand, asking for one more minute. There's something else, he said. Something that matters more than my apology. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick folder, its edges worn soft from being carried around too long. His hands trembled as he opened it. When Victor Langford started spreading his accusations, saying Jack was secretly profiting from this program, stealing from the very families he helped, I knew it was a lie. I knew it because I was there, years ago, when Jack was building all of this from nothing. So I did some digging. I called in favors. I hired an independent accountant, someone with no connection to Jack or to me, and I paid for a full audit of second-chance families going back 8 years. He pulled a stack of papers from the folder and held them up for the crowd to see. Every dollar, Derek said. Every single dollar that came into this organization is listed here. Every dollar that went out is listed too. And here's what the audit found. He looked down at the papers, then back up at the crowd. Jack Carter has never taken a salary from this organization. Not once. Not for 8 years. The crowd went quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet now, leaning forward instead of pulling back. Every contribution Jack ever made came from his own pocket, Derek continued. His motorcycle repair shop, his savings, money he could have used for himself, for his own family, for his own daughter. He glanced at Lily, who was watching everything with wide, serious eyes. Instead he put it here, into groceries for Ruth, into rent for Marcus, into a bed and a job for Tom. There is not one transaction in these 8 years where Jack Carter took anything for himself. Sarah Mitchell stepped forward, her hand pressed to her mouth. I knew he didn't take a salary, she said quietly. I didn't know it went back that far. There's more, Derek said. Victor Langford claimed Jack secretly owned a piece of the property this community center sits on, that he stood to profit if the land value went up. That's in the accusation he spread to the papers. Derek pulled out another document, this one with an official stamp at the bottom. This is the deed. The land was donated. Jack signed away any ownership claim the day this building opened. He doesn't own a single brick of this place. He never did. Someone in the crowd started clapping. Then another person joined in. Then another, until the applause rolled across the yard like a wave breaking on a shore. Derek waited for it to quiet down before he spoke again. I know I don't deserve to be the one standing up here defending Jack Carter's name. Not after what I did to Maya. Not after building my whole career on making other people feel small. He took a breath. But I owed him this. I owed all of you the truth. And I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to keep digging into Victor Langford's claims until every lie he told is unraveled, because that's the least I can do for a man who never asked me for anything, except to pay it forward. He stepped back from the microphone, folding the papers closed with careful hands, like he was closing something sacred. Jack still hadn't moved from the back of the crowd. Maya looked up at him, and she saw the tears finally slip down his face, the ones he had been holding back all night. Lily tugged on his hand, and he looked down at her. Daddy, she whispered. Everybody knows now. Everybody knows you're good. Jack knelt down and pulled her into a hug, his shoulders shaking as the crowd around them kept clapping, kept crying, kept holding on to each other in the soft glow of the string lights. Maya wrapped her arms around both of them, her husband and her daughter, feeling the weight of the last few weeks finally start to lift. The next morning, the community center parking lot looked different than it had in weeks. Instead of empty spaces and locked doors, there were tables set up in rows, folding chairs stacked and waiting, and a big paper banner taped across the front window that said, "Second Chance Families," in bright blue letters. Sarah Mitchell had painted it herself, staying up past midnight after the fundraiser ended. Maya arrived early with Lily holding her hand, a clipboard tucked under her other arm. She had barely slept, but she felt lighter than she had in weeks. The truth was out. Jack's name was clean. Now there was work to do. "Okay," she said to the small group of volunteers gathered near the entrance. "We need people at the donation table, people handing out flyers at the farmer's market, and somebody to call the local news station about covering today's event." A woman named Ruth, who Maya recognized from the audit papers Derek had shown the night before, raised her hand. "I can work the donation table. Jack got my family through the worst winter of our lives. I want to give something back." One by one, people volunteered. A veteran named Tom offered to run the grill for a cookout to raise extra money. A group of teenagers from the local high school showed up with poster board and markers, ready to make signs. Even people Maya had never met before walked up, saying they had seen the video online, the one that used to embarrass her, and now wanted to help. By mid-morning, Jack showed up on his motorcycle, the engine rumbling low as he pulled into the lot. He climbed off slowly, looking at the crowd of people already working, already laughing, already building something. For a moment, he just stood there, unsure of what to do with his hands. Maya walked over to him. "You okay?" "I don't know how to do this part," Jack admitted quietly. "The part where people help me instead of the other way around." Maya took his hand. "Then let me teach you. It starts with saying thank you." Jack walked through the lot, and one by one, people stopped him. A woman named Carla hugged him and told him her son had a warm coat that winter because of him. An older man named Frank shook his hand and said his rent got paid the month he almost lost his apartment. Jack nodded, said thank you, and felt something shift inside his chest each time, like a door opening that had been shut for years. By afternoon, the parking lot was filled with people. Someone had set up speakers playing music. Kids ran around with balloons tied to their wrists. The smell of grilled hot dogs drifted through the air, mixing with the sound of laughter and conversation. Donation jars filled up fast, and people lined up to write checks at a folding table Sarah had set up near the entrance. Derek arrived in the early evening, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. He carried boxes of supplies from his car, working quietly alongside the volunteers instead of standing in front of a camera. Maya noticed the change in him. He wasn't performing anymore. He was just helping. By the time the sun went down and the string lights turned on again, Sarah stood on a small stage with a microphone, tears in her eyes as she read the final number out loud. The donations, combined with the money raised the night before, were enough to reopen Second Chance Families immediately. The crowd erupted into cheers, hugging each other, some crying with relief. Maya stood next to Jack, watching Lily dance around with the other kids near the stage. Jack wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him. "We did it," she whispered. Jack nodded, but his face still carried a quiet worry beneath the relief. "For now," he said, "but one good night of donations won't keep this place running forever. We got lucky this time. We need something that lasts, something steady." Maya looked out at all the people who had shown up, who had given what they could, who believed in what Jack had built. "Then we'll figure out how to build that too," she said. together this time, not just you carrying it alone. Jack squeezed her hand, and together they watched the community they had built keep celebrating under the soft glow of the lights. Several weeks passed, and Second Chance Families looked nothing like the quiet, struggling place it had been before. The parking lot that once sat empty now filled up every morning with cars and bicycles and people carrying casserole dishes for the shared lunch table. The banner Sarah painted stayed taped in the window, though someone had added smaller handwritten signs underneath it. One read, "You are not alone here." Another simply said, "Welcome home." Maya stood in the small office she now shared with Sarah, going through a stack of papers with a pen tucked behind her ear. On the wall behind her desk hung a corkboard covered in photographs, mothers holding babies, kids grinning with missing teeth, a group of veterans standing together at the community cookout. She had started a new program just 3 weeks earlier, something she called Mothers Rising. It was simple in idea, but powerful in practice. Struggling mothers met twice a week, sharing meals, childcare, and honest conversation about the shame that so often came with needing help. "You'd be surprised how many women think they're the only one drowning," Maya told Sarah one afternoon as they folded flyers for the next meeting. "I thought that too, for years. I thought needing help meant I failed as a mother." Sarah smiled gently. "And now?" "Now I know asking for help is what good mothers do," Maya said. "It's how we keep going." The program grew fast. Within weeks, there was a waiting list. Women came in exhausted and scared, carrying diaper bags and worry lines on their faces, and left with something steadier in their eyes. Maya taught them what she had learned the hard way, that dignity and struggle could exist in the same heart at the same time. Down the hallway, Jack worked out of a smaller room that used to be a storage closet. He had cleared it out himself, setting up a folding table and 2 mismatched chairs. A hand-painted sign on the door read, "Veterans and Emergency Support." Word had spread quickly among local veterans that Jack understood their silence, their pride, and their fear of becoming a burden. He expanded what Second Chance Families offered, adding emergency grocery deliveries, help with utility bills, and a small fund for veterans facing sudden medical costs. He recruited a few other bikers from his old crew to help distribute supplies, all of them showing up in leather jackets that still made people nervous at first glance, until they saw the boxes of food in their arms and the gentleness in the way they knelt down to speak with children. One morning, an older veteran named Frank sat across from Jack, hands shaking slightly as he explained he could not afford his heart medication that month. Jack listened without interrupting, then reached for the small emergency fund folder on his table. "We got you," Jack said simply. "You don't have to carry this by yourself anymore." Frank's eyes filled with tears. "Nobody said that to me in years." Jack nodded, understanding more than words could explain. He had spent so much of his life being the strong one, the protector, the man people feared and misunderstood. But here, in this small room, he was learning that strength also meant showing up quietly, again and again, for people who needed someone steady. One evening, after the community center closed and the volunteers went home, Maya found herself driving down the familiar road that led to the gas station. She had not planned to stop there. Her hand simply turned the wheel out of habit, the same tired arms that once carefully counted cash before filling her tank. She pulled in slowly, the same faded pumps standing under the same buzzing lights. The station looked exactly as it had that night, ordinary and forgettable to anyone who did not know what happened there. Maya sat in her car for a long moment, watching the sun sink low behind the building. She thought about Derek's cruel words, the shame that burned in her chest, the way she had almost let it break her. She thought about kindness costing nothing, about walking away with her head held high even when her hands were shaking. She thought about Jack's motorcycle rumbling into that same parking lot, about the fear turning into safety, about one painful moment spinning into something bigger than she ever imagined. Maya stepped out of the car and walked to the very pump where it happened. She placed her hand against the cool metal, feeling the weight of everything that had grown from that single, ordinary night. A place that once meant humiliation now felt different beneath her palm, like a seed that had finally bloomed. The Carter house sat quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that only comes after a long day when everyone is finally where they belong. The porch light glowed yellow against the dark. Inside, the smell of spaghetti still hung in the air, and dishes sat drying in the rack by the sink. Lily sat on the living room floor in her pajamas, the ones with little cartoon stars on them, building a tower out of wooden blocks. She hummed to herself, completely lost in her own small world, while Maya and Jack sat together on the couch behind her. Jack had his boots off, his feet stretched out, one arm resting along the back of the couch. He looked tired, in the good way, the way a man looks after a day spent doing something that mattered. Maya leaned against him, watching Lily stack one block on top of another with the careful concentration only a 5-year-old could manage. "Higher, Lily," Jack said softly. "You can do it." Lily giggled and added another block, and the tower wobbled but held. Maya smiled, but her mind kept drifting back to the gas station, to the pump beneath her hand, to everything that had grown from one terrible night. She had been thinking about it all evening, turning a question over and over in her mind until she couldn't hold it in anymore. "Jack," she said quietly, "can I ask you something?" He turned his head toward her. "Always." "Why did you hide it?" Maya asked. "All of it. Second chance families, the money, the people you helped. Years of it, Jack. You never told anyone. You never even told me." Jack was quiet for a moment. His eyes moved to Lily, watching her stack another block, and something in his face softened, like he was remembering something far away. "When I was a kid," he said slowly, "my daddy used to say that anybody who does good and talks about it isn't really doing good. He said it was just showing off." Jack paused. "But that wasn't really it. Not the whole truth." Maya waited, letting him find the words at his own pace. "Truth is," Jack said, "I know what it feels like to be judged before anybody even gives you a chance. I know what it feels like to walk into a room and watch people's faces change soon as they see the jacket, the boots, the tattoos. They decide who I am before I ever open my mouth." He shook his head slowly. "And I know what it feels like to be forgotten, too. When I was struggling, back before I met you, wasn't nobody knocking down my door to help. I had to claw my way through it alone." He looked down at his hands, rough and scarred from years of work. "So when I started helping people," he continued, "I didn't want credit. I didn't want anybody looking at me and saying, 'Look what the big scary biker did, isn't that something?' I just wanted people to get help without feeling like they owed somebody a show of gratitude. I wanted it to feel clean, simple, like it should be." Maya reached over and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "But Jack," she said gently, "hiding it doesn't keep it clean. It just keeps it lonely." He looked at her, and something in his eyes shifted, like a door creaking open after being shut for years. "I never thought of it that way," he admitted. "You've spent so long being the strong one," Maya said, "the protector nobody sees coming. But Jack, people need to see the goodness behind you. Not because you need the praise, because they need to know it's possible. They need to know that a man who looks like the world is scared of can be the gentlest person in the room. That's not showing off, Jack. That's hope. That's proof." Lily's tower toppled over with a soft clatter, and she laughed immediately starting to rebuild it without a hint of frustration, the way only children can. Jack watched her, then looked back at Maya, his jaw tight with emotion he rarely let show. "I built walls so nobody could see the parts of me I was afraid to look at myself," he said quietly. "But maybe that's not fair to the people who need to see there's another way to be strong." Maya squeezed his hand. "You don't have to hide anymore, Jack. Not from me, not from anybody. The world needs to see the man I fell in love with. The one who kneels down to hand a little girl a grocery bag like it's the easiest thing in the world. That man isn't something to hide. He's something to be proud of." 3 months passed, and the community center on Maple Street looked nothing like it used to. Fresh paint covered the walls, a soft blue that Sarah had picked out herself. New tables filled the main room, donated by a local furniture store after Derek made a single phone call. Children's drawings hung along one wall, taped up crooked and proud, the way kids always hang things. The smell of coffee drifted from a corner station where volunteers signed in every morning, ready to help families who needed a hand. Maya stood near the front desk, holding a clipboard, checking off names for the afternoon food distribution. She looked up when she heard the door chime and saw Derek walking in, dressed down in jeans and a plain gray shirt instead of his usual tailored suits. He carried 2 large boxes stacked on top of each other, his arms straining slightly under the weight. "Where do you want these?" he asked, nodding toward the boxes. "Back room, with the others," Maya said, pointing. "Thank you, Derek." He set the boxes down carefully, not like a man showing off his generosity, but like someone who had learned to do things quietly. Maya had watched him change over the months, and at first she hadn't trusted it. She kept waiting for the old Derek to slip through, the one who cared more about how things looked than how they actually helped. But he never slipped. He showed up early. He stayed late. He used his social media accounts, the same ones that once mocked people like her, to share stories about second-chance families instead. He posted about single mothers finding work, about veterans getting back on their feet, about children getting new shoes before school started. He never made himself the center of the posts. He made sure the families were. "You've got sauce on your shirt," Maya said, pointing at a small stain near his collar. Derek glanced down and laughed, wiping at it with his thumb. "Helped serve lunch to about 40 kids today. Guess I'm not as smooth as I used to be." "You're better than smooth," Maya said. "You're real now." Derek's smile faded a little, replaced by something more thoughtful. "I used to think being real meant showing everybody how much I had. Now I think it means showing up even when nobody's watching." He looked around the room, at the volunteers stocking shelves, at a mother laughing with her toddler near the toy bin. "This place taught me that." Maya nodded, feeling a warmth settle in her chest. She had seen a lot of people change in her life, but rarely had she seen someone change so completely, so quietly, without needing anyone to notice. Later that afternoon, Jack arrived, his motorcycle boots heavy against the tile floor as he walked in from the parking lot. He'd been out most of the day, meeting with Sarah about the fall program schedule. When he spotted Derek across the room, stacking canned goods onto a shelf, he walked over. "Looking good in here," Jack said, glancing at the neatly organized shelves. Derek turned, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Sarah's been writing me about alphabetizing everything." He smiled, then his expression shifted, becoming more serious. "Jack, can I talk to you for a second?" Jack nodded, leaning against the shelf. "Sure." Derek took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "I've been wanting to say this for a while now, and I keep putting it off because I don't know how to say it right." He paused. "You could have destroyed me. After what I did to Maya at that gas station, After everything that came out later, you had every reason to end me. One post, one word to the press, and my whole life would have fallen apart." "I know," Jack said quietly. "But you didn't," Derek continued. "You gave me a chance instead. You let me stand here, doing something that actually matters, instead of making me pay for the rest of my life for one terrible moment." He shook his head, his eyes glassy. "Nobody's ever done that for me before. Not like that. Not without wanting something in return." Jack studied him for a long moment, his expression steady and calm. "Everybody deserves a second chance, Derek, even the ones who don't think they've earned it." Derek's throat tightened, and he had to look away for a second, blinking hard. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice rough, "for not destroying me, for letting me become somebody worth being." 1 year after the gas station incident, the same gas station on Route 9 looked like a different place entirely. Balloons tied to the pumps bounced in the morning breeze. Tables covered in checkered cloths lined the edge of the parking lot, stacked with donated food, boxes of school supplies, and jars for cash donations. A banner stretched across the front of the building, painted by hand in bright letters that read, "Second Chance Families. 1 year stronger." Someone had set up speakers near the entrance, playing soft music that drifted over the crowd, gathering little by little as the morning went on. Maya stood near the same pump where Derek had once mocked her, though now it was hard to imagine it had ever happened here. Folding chairs sat in rows, facing a small platform made from wooden pallets, and families filled almost every seat. Children ran between the tables, laughing, chasing each other around the legs of adults who didn't seem to mind. Sarah moved through the crowd with a clipboard, checking on volunteers. Derek stood near the drink table, pouring lemonade into paper cups for a line of kids, his sleeves rolled up, sweat on his brow from the summer heat. Jack stood a few feet from the platform, arms crossed, watching Maya as she climbed the 2 wooden steps to stand in front of everyone. Lily sat in the front row, swinging her legs, waving up at her mother with a proud smile stretched across her face. Maya held a small microphone, her hands trembling slightly as she looked out at the crowd. She spotted familiar faces. The woman who worked the register at the diner, a father who once broke down crying in the community center because he'd finally paid off his daughter's medical bills, veterans who had found steady work through the program, strangers who had simply heard about the story and wanted to be part of something good. "A year ago," Maya began, her voice steady despite the nerves, "I stood right here, filling up my car, counting change to make sure I had enough gas to get home." She paused, letting the memory settle over the crowd. "A man decided that day to make me feel small. He filmed me, laughed at me, tried to turn my hardest moment into entertainment for strangers online." She glanced toward Derek, who lowered his eyes but didn't look away completely. Maya offered him a small, forgiving smile before continuing. "I could have let that moment break me," she said. "I could have gone home and believed the things he said, that I didn't matter, that struggling meant I was less than everyone else." She shook her head. But something happened instead. My husband showed up, and instead of anger, he showed compassion, even to the man who hurt me. The crowd stayed silent, hanging on every word. "That day taught me something I carry with me every single moment now," Maya continued. "Kindness doesn't check your bank account before it decides you're worth it. It doesn't care what car you drive or what uniform you wear home from a double shift. Real kindness meets you exactly where you are." She looked toward Jack, feeling her chest swell with love and pride. "My husband built something out of that belief long before I even knew about it. Second chance families exists because one man decided that no parent should ever feel alone in their struggle. Today, standing here, at the very place where I was once humiliated, I get to say something different. Her voice grew stronger. This gas station isn't a place of shame anymore. It's a place where a community decided love mattered more than judgment. Applause rippled through the crowd, growing louder, spreading until it filled the parking lot. Some people wiped their eyes. Others reached for the hands of the people beside them. Lily jumped from her seat and ran up to hug Maya's legs, burying her face against her mother's side. Maya stepped down from the platform as more people came forward, some pressing donations into jars, others simply reaching out to shake her hand or offer a quiet word of thanks. A woman with tired eyes and a baby on her hip touched Maya's arm gently. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing us that people like us matter." Jack moved to Maya's side, his hand resting protectively at the small of her back as the crowd continued to gather around them, voices overlapping with gratitude, each person offering their own version of the same message. That compassion had found them in the most unexpected place, and it had changed everything. The sun was low by the time Jack's truck pulled into the driveway, and the sky had turned the color of peaches and honey. Maya sat in the passenger seat with her shoes off, her feet tucked under her, watching the porch light flicker on as if the house itself was glad they were home. Lily was asleep in the back seat, her head tilted against the window, a paper plate of half-eaten cake balanced carefully on her lap. Jack reached back without a word and caught the plate before it slid, setting it gently on the seat beside her. "She partied hard today," Maya said, smiling. "She earned it," Jack said. "Ran around that parking lot more than anybody." He carried Lily inside, her small arms looping around his neck without her ever fully waking. Maya followed behind, holding the door, watching the way his big frame moved so carefully, so soft, like he was carrying something made of glass instead of a 6-year-old covered in frosting. Inside, the house was quiet in the good way, the kind of quiet that comes after a full day, not an empty one. Jack laid Lily down on the couch instead of her bed, and Maya understood why. Neither of them wanted the night to end yet. They wanted her close a little longer. Maya made tea while Jack sat on the floor next to the couch, one hand resting on Lily's back, feeling her breathe. The television stayed off. Nobody reached for a phone. For a while, there was only the sound of the ceiling fan turning slow circles above them and the crickets starting up outside the window. "You did good today," Jack said, not looking up. "Standing up there, saying all that." "I meant every word," Maya said, sitting down beside him, mug warm between her hands. "I know you did." He finally looked at her, and something in his face was open in a way it rarely was. No walls, no guard, just Jack. "I used to think if people knew what I did, they'd think I was trying to buy forgiveness for something, trying to make up for who I used to be. And now? Now I think maybe some things aren't about being forgiven," he said. "Maybe they're just about doing right because it's right." Lily stirred, mumbling something in her sleep, and Jack's hand pressed a little steadier against her back until she settled again. Maya watched him do it. This man other people crossed the street to avoid. This man with scars on his knuckles and a leather vest hanging by the door, gentling their daughter back to sleep with nothing but patience and a quiet hand. She thought about the gas station a year ago. She thought about Derek's cruel laughter, about the fear that had crawled up her spine when she heard motorcycles roaring toward her. She had been so certain, in that moment, that trouble was arriving. Instead, love had arrived. It had just been wearing leather. Maya set her mug down and leaned her head against Jack's shoulder. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His arm came around her, steady as always, and together they sat there in the low lamp light, listening to their daughter breathe, feeling the whole day settle into something that felt a lot like peace. Their life was not perfect. The bills still came. The car still made a strange sound on cold mornings. There were nights Maya still worried about money, and there were mornings Jack still carried old aches in his bones from years of hard living before she knew him. But none of that mattered as much as it used to. Not anymore. Not when they had this. A home, a daughter safe and warm, a community that had wrapped itself around them like family. Maya closed her eyes and let herself simply exist in the moment. No worry pulling at her thoughts, no fear waiting around the corner. She understood something clearly now, something she would carry with her long after tonight. Strength was never about how loud a man could be, or how much fear he could put into a room, or how many zeros sat in a bank account. Real strength was quiet. It showed up in small rooms and quiet hours, in steady hands and patient hearts. It showed up in a man who chose gentleness when the world expected him to choose anger. Jack's legacy would not live in headlines or reputation. It would live in every person who had learned, because of him, to choose kindness over cruelty, again and again, long after tonight was over. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story, and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.